Congressional Capitols Part 11, a 1783 U.S. military mutiny forces Congress to flee to Princeton. In June 1783, the young republic faced a dangerous crisis. Hundreds of unpaid Continental soldiers marched on Philadelphia, surrounding Independence Hall, where the Confederation Congress and Pennsylvania's Executive Council were meeting. The mutineers demanded back pay, and the armed presence turned threatening. President Elias Boudinot appealed to the Pennsylvania's Executive Council, but its president, John Dickinson, hesitated, fearing the local militia would join the rebels. Congress then dispatched Major General Arthur St. Clair and Delegate Alexander Hamilton to negotiate with the mutinous troops, but their efforts proved fruitless. Under pressure and without Pennsylvania state support, Congress was forced to flee Philadelphia, walking out of Independence Hall through jeering soldiers. Recognizing the government's vulnerability, Boudinot moved quickly. He appealed to George Washington for military assistance and then to Governor William Livingston of New Jersey, who pledged the states full protection should Congress relocate. On June 24, 1783, President Boudinot issued a proclamation relocating the capital to Princeton, where the College of New Jersey provided Nassau Hall as a meeting place for Congress and a seat for conducting the affairs of the United States. Completed in 1756 for the College of New Jersey at a cost of £2,900, Nassau Hall, named in honor of King William III, Prince of Nassau, stood as the largest stone structure in the American colonies. Built of local sandstone, its 175-foot halls were plain yet grand, with 3 arched entrances, long corridors, and a 2-story prayer hall. A modest pediment, cupola, and 12 chimneys crowned the roofline, while the cellar served as a kitchen and dining hall, later improved with a moat for light and air. Though simple in design, the scale and durability made Nassau Hall an enduring landmark. During the war, the British occupied Princeton and used Nassau Hall as a barracks until it was recaptured by General Washington during the Battle of Princeton. 7 years later, when Congress convened at Nassau Hall on June 30th, Secretary Charles Thomson wrote to his wife describing the oppressive summer heat, the cramped student quarters, and the discomfort of their new surroundings. Yet despite these hardships, the delicate spirits were lifted by the people of Princeton, who welcomed Congress with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. For its daily sessions, the United States and Congress assembled met in Nassau Hall's library, situated above the main entrance, while formal ceremonies and visits by dignitaries took place in the chapel below. Congress's arrival transformed Princeton overnight from a quiet village into the capital of the United States. The once silent streets bustled with wagons and merchants importing goods from Philadelphia, and the vendors cried out their wares, pineapples, oranges, lemons, as well as other imported delicacies fit for the nation's leaders. While serving as President of Congress, Elias Boudinot took up residency with his sister Annis Boudinot Stockton at her Princeton estate, Morven. Annis was among the colonial America's most remarkable women. Celebrated for her intellect, literary talent, and grace, she was the first woman poet published in the British American colonies, with more than 120 works appearing in the leading newspapers and magazines of the day. Courted by many, Annis married Richard Stockton, lawyer, jurist, and future signer of the Declaration of Independence in 1758. At Morven, which she named after the legendary King of Morven, Annis transformed the home into a center of cultural and political life. Annis allowed her brother, the president, to hang the portrait of Governor Bernardo de Gálvez in Morven because Congress had accepted it on May 8th in gratitude for his vital aid to the Revolution, driving the British from the Gulf Coast, opening the Mississippi supply line, and providing funds, arms, and intelligence to the United States cause. During Congress's stay in Princeton, she hosted statesmen and diplomats, becoming the first woman not married to a president to fulfill the hospitality role of a first lady. Her estate, once plundered by General Cornwallis during the Revolution, was now the elegant residence of the nation's president of Congress, symbolizing both her resilience and her influence in shaping early American society. One of the first acts of Congress at Princeton came on July 1, 1783. When the members ordered General Robert Howe to suppress the Philadelphia Mutiny. This simple directive, which greatly offended Major General Arthur St. Clair, carried immense weight. It reaffirmed that the military answered to civilian authority and not the other way around. In a world ruled by military dictators and kings, that principle made the American experiment radically different. Later that month, on July 29th, Congress ratified the first peacetime treaty of amity and commerce with Sweden. No longer dependent on the French alliance, the United States now negotiated as an equal among nations, with its flag beginning to appear in northern European harbors. By September, attention turned westward when Congress accepted Virginia's cession of its vast western land claims, stretching to the Mississippi River on September the 13th. This act transformed the Revolution's achievement of independence into a blueprint for continental expansion. From these ceded lands emerged the trilogy of federal land ordinances of 1784, 85, and 87, measures that financed public education, prohibited slavery, and established the principle that new states would enter the Union on equal footing with the original 13. 9 days later, on September the 22nd, Congress issued a proclamation regarding the purchase of Indian lands. The measures forbade individuals or states from purchasing land from native nations without federal consent, asserting Congress's exclusive authority over Indian affairs. This act foreshadowed what would become the Indian Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, an early affirmation that only the federal government, not the states, could speak for the nation in its dealings with indigenous peoples. 2 days after that, on September the 24th, Congress passed a secret order empowering George Washington to discharge the Continental Army as he shall deem proper. It was the quiet end of the Revolution. Then, on October 8th, Congress received a petition from the Philadelphia Quakers urging the abolition of the slave trade. It was the first such appeal ever presented to the national government. Perhaps the most consequential debate in Princeton came 2 weeks later, on October the 21st. Congress voted to establish 2 federal capitals, one on the Delaware River and the other on the Potomac, where the sessions would alternate each year. The idea of a federal district had gained force after the mutiny in Philadelphia, when Congress learned firsthand the peril of relying on state militias for its own protection. Leaders such as James Madison and Alexander Hamilton argued that the nation required a capital free from state control, where federal authority could stand on its own ground. Other delegates agreed, but feared the alienation of powerful states by favoring one city, so Congress chose 2 alternating capitals, symbolizing balance between North and South. This compromise set the precedent that would eventually lead to the creation of the federal district on the Potomac in Washington, D.C. On October 31st, Congress resolved to keep John Dunlap as its official printer. The next day, Saturday, November 1st, the Third Confederation Congress voted to carry over all pending business forward to the Fourth Confederation Congress, scheduled to convene at Nassau Hall in Princeton on Monday. At Princeton, within the ivy-clad walls of Nassau Hall, Congress brought the war to a close on November 4th by formally disbanding the Continental Army, retaining only 500 men. There, it defined the nation's borders, reaffirmed civilian authority, concluded the Third and inaugurated the Fourth Confederation Congress, and set in motion the search for a federal district to serve as a U.S. capital. To celebrate the 250th birthday of the United States of America, we created a richly illustrated 2026 calendar, which presents the architectural, political, and cultural history of each of the 11 congressional capitals, where the foundations of the United States were laid. Each month, the calendar features a full-color depiction of one of the congressional capitals, an architectural and historic profile of the building, the political context and key legislation enacted within its walls, daily notations of the pivotal U.S. founding events tied to their actual anniversaries. Far more than a calendar, this is a portable historical exhibit bringing together forgotten capitals, overlooked debates, and legislative milestones that transformed a group of colonies into a functioning republic. Perfect for the historians, educators, students, and all who wish to follow the nation's path from independence to the Constitution. To order, visit www.historic.us/CAPITOLS.